Hello, and welcome to Introduction to Homeschooling in Alberta. This webinar is specifically for the year of 2016 and 2017. And we know you're probably considering homeschooling, or maybe you've made that decision and you're already starting. And hopefully this webinar will give you a lot of information and information you can go back to and review, because there's a lot to learn. It's not a simple procedure, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be great. So let's get started. Okay, first of all, my name is Judy Arnall. I am a certified Canadian family life educator, and I have homeschooled my 5 children, the first 2 from grade 1 and grade 2, and then the rest from day 1, basically. So the last 2 children have never been in school. And yeah, that's kind of my story. I'm a bit of a realist in that I teach parenting and non-punitive education, but I also not always practice what I preach. So my kids are age 14 now to 25, and my 3 oldest children are either have graduated university or on the cusp of graduating university. We are an unschooling family, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And yeah, that's us. I've also written 2 books. The first one is on what's normal child development and how to handle parent and child stress. And the second book is on discipline, and it's all about non-punitive parenting. So if you're interested, feel free to check out those books. And they've been translated into different languages. So if you speak a different language, you might be interested in that. I also teach parenting at the University of Calgary, continuing education. And I used to teach for Alberta Health Services, but I still teach the program Terrific Toddlers that was developed by Alberta Health Services. So if you're interested in either of those, Terrific Toddlers is very good for parents of ages 1 to 4, and then the PET is good for parents of ages 4 to 25 because it's a very communication-based course. Now, I think parenting is one of the hardest jobs in the world. I think every parent should have a tip jar in their kitchen table. And I put this on my table once, and I got some quarters and dimes and little chocolate bars. It was really cute. And then I decided to put a wife's tip jar in the laundry room, and I put a $50 bill in there to set the precedence, but didn't get any more money, so I don't do laundry anymore in my house. So this is it's not a live webinar. This is a copy you're viewing, so we don't really have to worry about any of this. But keep in mind, this is copyrighted and protected by intellectual property laws. So we ask that you kindly not share it with your friends and family, other than your partner and maybe your children. But if they would like a copy, they could contact Professional Parenting. So let's assume that your goal is university. Now, we know that not all children are going to go to university. The recent statistic is that parents of children in grade 10, about 80% of those parents expect their children to go on to university. By grade 12, that number drops to 40%. And that's because a lot happens between grade 10 and grade 12. But let's just assume you want to leave that door open. Maybe down the road your child would want to go into a university or post-secondary, and you want to keep those options open. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in Alberta and history of education. If you have children already in school, you probably know this. But if you're new to school, you might not know this. So our greatest obligation in education is to prepare our children for effectiveness in the world they will inherit, not the world we have known. And what's happening with that is the education system is struggling to define who we're educating for. What are we going to teach kids so they'll be productive members of society for the next 50 years. And how are we going to teach them? What's interesting to note is that only about 50% of Canadians enroll their children in preschool. And I used to think that figure was a little higher, but no, there's Canada. Where is Canada? No, I saw it somewhere here. Oh, here we go. Canada, right there. 50% of children attend preschool. Whereas in a lot of other countries, the high preschool countries are France, Spain, Belgium, Norway, Italy, a lot of the European countries. And even though 50% of our children don't go to preschool, with the PISA tests, we are generally near the top 10 in reading, science, and mathematics. What the PISA tests are, they're worldwide exams for 15-year-olds from a whole bunch of different countries. And they take exams in math, science, and reading. And it's kind of a comparison to how well countries are doing with each other. So as you can see, Canada in math, we used to be in the top 10, and we have dropped a bit, which has been a real concern in schools. And in science, we are in the top 10, and reading, definitely in the top 10. So even though kids don't go to preschool, about half of them, that's okay. It's not to say that more school is better. Sometimes less school is better. In our province, we've had two major shifts in education. The first one came in 2009 under our minister, David Hancock, called Inspiring Education. And that was revamped in 2011 under our minister, Thomas Lukaszuk, called Our Children, Our Future. What came out of these? These were symposiums, and every stakeholder was invited to go. So that meant principals, university education faculties, curriculum development, parents, even some students, teachers, business owners. Everybody got together and decided, what do we want to teach kids for the next 50 years? And what came out of that was that we want kids to learn more competencies rather than content, because content they have at their fingertips in their smartphone. So we also wanted three things, the 3 E's: engaged thinkers, ethical citizens, and with an entrepreneurial spirit. So if a job is not out there waiting for them, they can create their own jobs. So in May 2013, it was passed into law with the Ministerial Order that we would have the 3 E's within a realm of literacy and numeracy and some subject areas. Now, these don't look like typical subject areas like math, science, social studies, history. They're more broad-based that way, and a lot of them go over all those, literacy and numeracy, such as creativity, communication, digital fluency. It encompasses all subject areas. But out of that came 10 major outcomes, 10 competencies. And these are the 10 competencies. So right now, if your child is in grade 7, they currently have to check off about 1,400 outcomes in math, English, social studies, science, health, phys ed, and art and drama. Now they're compressing the curriculum into 10 very vague outcomes. And these 10 are very, very, you can go really wide here. When I was speaking at a teachers conference, I actually took the game of Minecraft, and I asked the teachers to break Minecraft down into these 10 competencies. And pretty well every one of them could have been checked off just by playing the Minecraft game. So that's kind of good. But it opens up a huge can of worms, like how do you test for these competencies, and what do we teach? What does that look like in the classroom? That has not come to be yet. That was supposed to be implemented in March of 2016, but because of the change in government, now that we have the NDP government, that's been on hold for another year. So we're moving from content to competencies. So not so much what you know, but what you can do with what you know. Sure, it's good to know math on paper, but how does that transmit to measuring 2x4s to put up in your basement wall? Can you take what you learn on paper and apply it to the real world? And that's what we want children to do. There's also some policy shifts in education where it's going to be more focused on the learner, on building competencies, and on using technology, which is good. And it will be more digitally based, which I'm sure is not good. I'll talk about that later. One of the best parts about education now is the presence of adults. And in homeschooling, that is where you truly have the advantage, is that kids need adults. So they're going to replace the provincial achievement tests with student learning assessments. So PATs used to be at the end of the year. Student learning assessments are more at the beginning of the year to see where there are areas that are needed by kids. And in high school, not so much based on hours per credit, but demonstration of competencies, which is good. This allows teachers and homeschoolers to go deep rather than wide. And again, it's going to be digital based, and the diploma exams are staying, although the weighting has changed. They're no longer 50% of the final course grade, they're now 30%. And also because of that, you may want to consider homeschooling in that you are giving your child the mark for 70%. You are more realistic about what their abilities and strengths are. One of the things that came out of that symposium was asking, where do people learn? This is what everyone came out with. And as you can see, school is only one of many places where children learn. And what are the ways you've learned what you know today? And again, school ranked number 3, behind people and experience. This was from Inspiring Education. In case you have any skeptics in your family, the Fraser Institute put out a report in 2007 called Homeschooling, From the Extreme to the Mainstream. It was glowing, but it was mostly based on research coming out of the U.S. Then, last year in 2015, they came out with another report on homeschooling in Canada, and that was absolutely glowing. The highlights of that report is that the average homeschooler is involved in 8 social activities a week. Excuse me. And that kind of speaks to the fact that the most common question homeschoolers get is, what about socialization? Well, our kids are pretty well socialized. Children did academically better than even private schools. And homeschooling grew 29% over the last 5 years, and that's just counting traditional homeschoolers. That is not counting all the home-based school options like online courses. And there was no socioeconomic strata bias. So the research showed that if a mom was single and had low income, she did better homeschooling than the public school did. So all around, glowing marks for homeschooling from the Fraser Institute. Where are homeschoolers? Well, in Canada, there's about 100,000 kids, or 2% of the country's population is homeschooled. Now, a subset of homeschooling in families that don't follow a curriculum or plan are called unschoolers, and they're about 10% of homeschoolers. So what do you need to do? First off, if your children are in school, your first step is to notify. Now, you don't have to tell the school where they're going, what you're doing. All you have to say is, little Jason is not coming back for the fall. What happens is when you register with your homeschooling school, you sign a form authorizing them to collect files or information from the old school. So, but it's nice to let your school know that you're not coming back. Step 2. In Alberta, it is law that you have to be supervised by a school board. In a private school is called a school authority, and a public school is called a school board or jurisdiction. Either one can supervise homeschoolers. There are about 15 across Alberta. You don't have to go with your local school board like Calgary Board of Education. You can go with a number of non-resident school boards. It's best to register by September 30th because then you get funding. If you register after that, you are called a rescue family and you will not get funding for this year, although there are some boards willing to take you on and supervise you. So if you pull your child out mid-year, that's okay. You can do that and still find someone to register with. You just can't get funding. On September 30th, that's the day the government looks at the enrollment of all the schools and allocates money. So if you're buying things, save your receipts because after September 30th, you can put them through to your school board and claim payment back. Now, if you ever decide your child's done homeschooling, you can put them back in the system and they would go right to the grade that corresponds with their age. So let's say you pull your child out, homeschool for 3 years, and they want to go back and say grade 6. Or if they're 12 years old, they go back into grade 6. It's no problem. It's good to know there's no funding for homeschool kindergarten. Funding starts in grade 1 when a child is age 6. Now, there are many boards, like I said. The larger ones are the ones on the left. The smaller ones are the ones on the right. And there are advantages with each board. Every board is different, offers different benefits. If your friend is with one board and loves them, it may not be the right fit for you or your child. Some parents have different boards for different children, depending on what they need. So, for example, I would choose a board that has a really good online program for my grade 12 student. And I would choose a different board for my grade 4 student where I want something a little more hands-off, maybe not a lot of field trips, or maybe a lot of field trips. So it depends. The best thing you should do is visit the boards. They have open houses in the spring. We're a little beyond that right now. But definitely phone them up, ask if you can look around. I do have a checklist on the website professionalparenting.ca, which you can see down here. If you go to the homeschooling tab, you will find all the handouts I'm going to refer to. So on that, under, I think, step 2, there is a list of all the schools and their links to their websites, so you can find out what each school offers. Then you have to decide, step 3, what is your philosophy? Do you believe in kinesthetic learning? Do you believe in learning by travel? Do you like doing unit studies? Do you like child-directed learning, such as unschooling? Depends on the child and on you. So decide what your philosophy is of education. And when you meet with your facilitator in the fall, be sure to clarify what your philosophy is so you have a good fit with that person. A lot of times you get facilitators who are school teachers and don't often understand the uniqueness of home education, in that we don't have to follow the Alberta Program of Studies. We can do what we want. So, and they may not be too familiar with that approach, and it might not be a good fit. So you can definitely ask to speak to another facilitator. So there's different philosophies. Some families follow a classical type of education. Some families follow the Alberta Program of Studies for all subjects, and we kind of call that school at home, but they don't have to. They choose to. Some just do it for math and English. Some do unit studies or projects. Some follow a Waldorf or Montessori approach. Some are totally interest-led and unschool, which is what we did. up until at least the later high school years, and some just follow an eclectic or homeschooling approach, year by year and subject by subject and child by child. It depends. It's a little mix of everything. Then you have to choose a program. So you can either do traditional homeschooling, which is parent-directed, 100%. For that, you get full funding, and it's your ball of wax. You control everything. You plan, you buy, you deliver, you mark. For that, you get half of the home education funding, which works out to about $835 a year to buy supplies. You are governed under the Home Ed regulations, which is under the School Act, but it is unique to home educators. If you decide, no, I don't want to teach the whole ball of wax. I just want to do half the program. I want to teach, let's say, math and English, and then I want to farm out social studies, science, and phys ed to a school. So that's what's called a blended program. So it's half school, half parent. So on the school portion, the school has to deliver 50% of the program. They are totally responsible and they control it, not you. And because they get funding to teach their half of the blended program, you only get about half of the traditional side of funding. The school can deliver their program by online or correspondence courses, and they are governed by the School Act, so they have to teach the Alberta Program of Studies. In Alberta, it doesn't matter which school you attend. If you set your child to private schools, charter schools, public schools, Catholic schools, they all get the same Alberta Program of Studies. Grade 4 includes science topics such as recycling, waste. Every child in Alberta will get that topic in grade 4 science, except for traditional home education. You can teach whatever you want in science. It's up to you. So on the left-hand side, you control it. On the right-hand side, you control half, but the school controls the other half. Okay, let's look at this again. So traditional parent-directed, you control it all. You're totally responsible. You can teach the Alberta Program of Studies or anything you want. I used to say we used to teach the curriculum of Nintendo because my kids played so many video games. In blended, you get half the subjects, or you can delegate half to the school. The school has to use the Alberta Program of Studies, and you can use the Alberta Program of Studies or anything, but it's half and half. Now, some people will talk about aligned school. What aligned is, there's actually no term called aligned in Alberta education. For them, aligned is called school. School is home-based in that the school teaches through online courses or correspondence, but it's school-controlled. School is responsible for making your child do the work, and the school follows the Alberta Program of Studies. You are just the parent. You are not expected to teach. Your child is not expected to provide, other than you just help them get set up on their desk and their computer. You are not expected to provide a teacher's role. The teacher teaches the program. That is why schools are funded, fully funded, for doing aligned programs, because they are expected by Alberta Education to teach it, to market, and to deliver it. So let's be clear about that. Aligned is called home-based school, but it is school. It is not homeschooling. Okay, and this is kind of just what I've said. So the school is totally responsible. So if you sign up your son, Jason, for a aligned program, and let's say you meet with a facilitator in October after the funding, and your facilitator comes out and says, little Jason hasn't been turning in enough work. I suggest you move him over onto the traditional program. That is not appropriate. If you sign up for an online program, they are responsible for motivating your child to do the work. And they're supposed to teach it. It's not your job to do that. And you certainly don't have to go down to a traditional or hand over lots of your funding. And it's good to know your rights. Again, on the website, professionalparenting.ca, there's a lot of handouts on knowing your rights and responsibilities. So which program is good for your child? If your child is very high needs spirited, they may not want to listen to you or be directed by a rigid program. Maybe you want to choose something a little more flexible and try a parent-directed traditional program. Now, if your child is easygoing and loves a more structured program, they might be a better fit for the Alberta Program of Studies. It depends on what you see your child is doing. How much time does homeschooling take? Not much. They don't have to line up and do group work and wait for the class clown to settle down. It can be really efficient. In fact, most parents of school children spend more time battling homework than homeschoolers do to actually deliver a program. So elementary school ages, maybe 10 to 30 minutes a day, and then you have reading and field trips on top. Junior high takes about 1 hour a day, and high school takes about 2 to 3 hours per day. Again, not including pleasure reading and field trips. And the beauty is, no homework. So you can see children have a lot of time during the day to explore projects, to do what they want to do, to play. My kids would play video games. And because they take responsibility for filling up their day, the onus is not on you to keep them entertained. They learn very quickly to be self-directed. And that's wonderful. A lot of homeschooling parents work part-time, work full-time, because their kids are self-entertaining. It's not that their kids are sitting there saying, feed me, I'm bored. They learn to entertain themselves, and that's great. Now, here's the kicker. Most homeschoolers never finish a year. I don't have direct evidence of this, but it's anecdotal evidence. Because you know what? With best intentions, we start off in September and we let things slide. Humans are procrastinators and we get distracted. So a deal on a vacation comes up and we go on vacation. Or we have unexpected relatives come visit. Or the weather is great and we spend more time outside than we planned. So you know what? Sometimes we just let it go and we start the next new year in the new grade. And you know what? The kids still keep on learning. They still excel. So don't worry. It's not that scary. A lot of new homeschoolers think, oh my gosh, will I mess them up? Will I wreck them? And it's not true. Even when we don't finish a year, we're doing really, really well. Because children need adults. They need conversations. They need one-on-one attention, things they don't get in school, and that is what builds their brains. So step 5, choose your curriculum, or not, if you choose not to use curriculum and be an unschooler. So for the first year, I'd recommend just use what's in the library and what's available online. There are amazing worksheets online that you can pull off, and wait and see how your child learns. Are they hands-on? Are they kinesthetic? Are they more auditory? See what works. You'll notice there's a lot of curriculum sales in the spring and a lot of workbook-based curriculum sales, and a lot of that is kids that have not had a good fit with those types of curriculum. So don't buy somebody else's errors. If you can, wait and see how your child learns. I would suggest trying to buy more hands-on manipulatives, more hands-on learning kits, because workbooks and textbooks are what teachers have to use in a classroom when they're teaching 30 kids. But you at home, you can use a lot more hands-on things like movies, field trips, science kits, those kinds of things. I'll show you examples in math later. Subject areas. For elementary schools, English language arts is the biggest proportion. So in grades 1 to 3, you're mostly teaching kids to read. And then grades 4 to 6, kids are learning by reading. Math is the second biggest. So as you can see, that's probably half the program right there. And science, social studies, art, drama, music, health, and phys ed fill up the rest. So math is really interesting. You can learn math all over the place. As you can see, math is represented. It's just solving everyday life. And children get symbolic math before they learn it on paper. What we call mental math, they get it in their heads before they learn how to figure it out on paper. What about reading? Again, we live in a very enriched environment. There's literacy all over the place. My children didn't learn to read until these ages. Obviously, the English major, she learned at 4, but my boys were late readers. And once they cracked the code, we did phonics, we did everything we could, and they just weren't catching on to reading. But once it's like toilet training. It came naturally in their own developmental timetable. Once they cracked the code, they got it. And a year later, they were reading novels like The Warriors. So you can't tell now which of my kids learned to read late or early. They were all different ages, and they're all love reading right now. And that's the beauty. You want to preserve that love of reading. Children in school barely read one novel in each high school grade. One novel for grade 11, one novel for grade 10, one novel for grade 12. Homeschoolers tend to read an average of 10 novels a year. So they're advancing in their literacy skills. And a lot of that is because they're not forced to write book reports on novels. They read for the enjoyment of reading. What about science and social? Again, science is all around us. And if you can let kids explore hands-on, they will love it. Do their own experiments. And social studies is best learned through travel, through field trips, through exploring museums. This is my son who we went to Germany, and he explored a concentration camp. That learning stuck more than reading about it in a book. Most school boards will start online in grade 7. If they offer online earlier, it's more you printing off worksheets, having the child do them, scanning them, and sending them online again. It's not true online school. In true online school, in grade 7 and 8, the child is directly on the computer where there's Dropbox and a shell for working online. So be aware of that difference, because if somebody's offering online in grade 2 or 3, you might want to explore what that actually looks like and how much work entails from you. Where do you get hands-on materials? Well, workbooks are all over, but hands-on, these are some stores and places that offer through mail order hands-on materials. This is a math, geometric, what do you call those things? Whatever you call those things, with a net inside. So this is really good. I mean, kids can play with this when they're grade 1, and they also use it in their math in grade 8. So those are expensive, by the way. Their workbooks are cheap, but kids don't like workbooks. So save your receipts and buy as much hands-on things as you can. And if you can get hands-on things at curriculum sales, grab it, because kids love it. So here's an example for math. Bingo, playing a multiplication bingo game. appeals to kids who are more interpersonal and like group things. If you have a really linguistic smart child, math through story problems might be something for them. If you have a kid who wants to move, Bodily-Kinesthetic, take them to a playground and start skip counting through those grids that are painted on playground asphalt. If you have a musically intelligent child, maybe they learn the times tables through music. Spatially intelligent, they learn math concepts through, like I said, those nets, pattern blocks. Legos, this is x squared plus 1x plus 3. But they're learning this physically when later in grade 8 they can learn it on paper. And if you have a nature person, using things in nature is very good. And there's those nets again. I found all kinds of things for my child learning place value. These stamps are really helpful. They would play with them for hours. It wasn't like me forcing them to do a worksheet. And when my son had trouble learning multiplication, I cut these numbers out really big. These are 2-foot numbers, and he had to jump to each number to memorize the progression of where you multiply. So you can improvise all kinds of these things. There's lots of blogs on the internet that show you how to teach certain concepts interactively. For example, all you would do is 3-digit multiplication, teach interactively. Google that and up comes all kinds of resources from Facebook, blogs, and Pinterest on how to do that. And you probably have things around your house like blocks. Who doesn't have blocks? Okay, excuse me. Step 6, find a support group. This is handy because there are times you're going to be pulling your hair out when the kids are fighting all day, and you're just going to need somebody to listen and assure you that it's all going to work out. And there are times when you want to share things. Like there's going to be so many aha moments through the day that you want to share. What about socialization? Probably the best part of homeschooling is socializing. Kids are not peer graded. They interact with everybody, and they don't have just one social group. They have many social groups, which is really great. They learn to talk to adults, and they learn to look adults in the eye. It builds confidence, and they're very well socialized. And they have lots of friends too. If your child has trouble making friends, I found the best thing is to start an interest-based group in your home. For example, if your child really loves to read books, start a book club. And after a few months, they start building friends. Or yes, you have to feed them, you have to endure a bit of mess, but it's kind of worth it because if a group isn't out there that your child can join based on their interests, you can start it. Remember, peers are not nurturing. Yes, there is some bullying in homeschooling, but it's a small little portion, and it's usually monitored by adults and nipped in the bud. So, because there are a lot more adults around on field trips, on social groups, and I liken it to a tree. When adults are around and can protect children from a lot of childhood bullying and not so nice behaviors, the tree grows up straight and tall and can withstand all the winds because it has been protected during its growth, as opposed to a tree who is just left alone, not attended by adults, left alone with 200 kids on a playground to endure whatever they throw at them. And it doesn't grow up straight and tall, and it doesn't often withstand the winds. Now, your facilitator is someone assigned to you by your school board. They're a certified teacher. Check to see if they homeschool themselves and what type of homeschooling. You'd probably want a facilitator who's unschooled if you want to unschool. A lot of facilitators have not homeschooled their own children, and it can be a little hard educating them about how homeschooling is different. So if you don't like your facilitator, call up your school board principal and say, we're not a good fit. Can you assign me somebody else who's a little more comfortable with blah, 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 however you're doing it. They're supposed to be your partner in education, and they're supposed to provide a support role. What help can they provide? They should never, ever scold you, make you feel bad. If that's the case, ask them to leave and phone your principal. So you'll have 2 visits from your facilitator. The fall visit is where you go over your learning plan. And again, on the website under Homeschooling Professional Parenting Canada, you will find some templates for filling out a learning plan. Excuse me. The spring visit is your assessment. So your facilitator comes, talks to your children. Usually they come to your home, have a cup of tea for them, and you can just show them things. The kids will want to show them things. On the traditional program, there are no marks given at all. All the facilitator signs off is that the child has met the student learning outcomes for home educators not following the Alberta Program of Studies. That is a legal document. It's great to have in case, family members say, are they doing okay? Saying, yes, a certified teacher signed off on this. So it's supposed to be a nice, fun time to cap the year. If they're on a blended program, half their school provided will be given marks by the school. Okay, they may have exams on those subjects, but that is school. That's not parent directed. Now, there's no testing on traditional ever. However, except for grade 12, if children want marks and credits in subjects in high school, they do have to write the same diploma exams as everyone else in the province. So what I did was I would just, to keep track of what my kids were learning, I would just fill in these little notebooks each year. I'd have one per year, have all the children and their grades, and I would divide it into social studies or subjects. And I would record things they did or things they learned. I would just plunk it in there. So when I met with the facilitator at the end of the year, I wasn't thinking, oh my gosh, we watched a lot of TV. What did we do this year? And it was just a quick, once a month, half an hour, sit down and write down things from my daytime or what we did. Yes, here we go. So for example, in grade 6, I wrote down under air and aerodynamics, a topic in science, I wrote down, we went to the science center, we learned pitch, roll, and yaw. We visited a WestJet field trip. We went in one of their airplanes. Sky science, we watched the Perseids meteor shower. We went camping and we watched the sky. We read an Usborne book, Planet Earth, and another book called Astronomy. And that was it. That's what we did for science that year. Done. Again, you can follow the Alberta Program of Studies, or you don't have to on the traditional program. For high school, it's a little different. I would do one per course because it is a little more involved. And if you have a high schooler, and please contact me because I do have a separate webinar for high school. And in the spring visit, you want to plan for next year. Is your child getting older? Do they want to go more online, or are you happy doing what you're doing? For organization, there's lots of tips and tricks. You need lots of bookshelves, and I find these containers wonderful for organizing all of the administration. With 3 kids in university, there's a lot of paperwork, so I just keep it straight that way. One thing I found is that kids don't remember much before age 12, before they get their abstract thinking skills. So you might ask them at 14, do you remember that experiment we did when you were 8? And they will say no. So don't think that you're opening their brains, filling them up with content, and zipping them up, because a lot of what you do, they'll forget. What you do stimulates their brain cells, but a lot of it won't stay in long-term memory. If you have a child with special needs, some school boards will do coding, but I suggest you contact the boards because there's different rules and different what they provide. There's no much extra funding for special needs. The kicker is they have to be on an Alberta program of studies program, and it's usually school-based. So there's not a whole lot of help for children who are on a parent-directed traditional home education program. You can get them coded privately through, you can get a psych educational testing through a lot of psychologists. You'd have to pay for it. What I found is that there are way more supports for children with special needs at post-secondary, and they want testing within 3 years. So unless your child's getting to high school and needs more accommodation on those exams that count, it's up to you whether you want to do this or not. Now, again, homeschooling it feels like stepping off a cliff, but keep in mind, you're doing the best thing for your child. I don't know anybody who's homeschooled and has regrets that they didn't wish they did it. A few regrets. One thing I regret is that it was a lot of driving around to play dates, but it was worth it in the long run. That was a minor disadvantage, but the advantages far outweighed that. Remember, it's only for a year. It's not for life. You will not mess them up for 1 year. Absolutely not. When you look at homeschoolers who unschool and just let the child play for all their childhood years and still they plunk into high school and go to university, you cannot mess up your child at all. You will have peer support from other homeschoolers, and you'll have your school board support. And you can't stop kids from learning. They learn from the day they're born and from the minute they start breathing. You cannot stop that learning. You cannot mess it up. And when you think about it, we all homeschool our kids until age 6. You're just continuing on. Lots of benefits. This is my daughter when she was in grade 9. She emceed the Christmas party at CBE Learn. And this was her at her graduation. She actually spoke in front of 100 people. It's not like she's exceptional at that, but homeschooling gives kids confidence and self-esteem from adult support, from peer support. It's amazing. They get a lot of sleep. If for one reason, if you have a child in junior high or high school, they get way more sleep because they can sleep in the mornings, and that grows their brain. It's a lot more relaxed family time. Most homeschoolers finish their activities by supper, and they have the whole evening together. And they have lots of time for interests and where they want to explore. A lot of homeschoolers at high school know where they want to go because they've had time to explore. Close siblings and family. Focus on family and not so much on peers. They learn great work habits. Like I said, they become really self-directed and self-entertaining, and they love learning. It's their life. It's not something they have to go and do from 9 till 3. They have superior social skills because they interact with all ages, all genders, all cultures, all religions, and it's one-on-one education. How can you beat that? I found the close family and siblings, even with an 11-year age gap between my youngest and my oldest, they are close. My sons will come home and help the younger one build a computer, and they're all very, very close. And that doesn't go away. That lasts a lifetime. So really, you can't mess it up. So I hope you found this informational. Definitely, if you have any more questions, feel free to ask me or email me. It's the best way to get a hold of me. I'm available that way. And go to the website, professionalparenting.ca. Look up homeschooling under the tab, and there are tons of resources for you. And I try and keep them up to date, so they are for the school year this year. And happy homeschooling, and thank you for looking into it. If it's not a fit for you this year, maybe next year, but at least you'll have a lot more information on what it's about. Well, thank you, and have a great day.